Hello, it's time to start Granny Shares the Bible again. I'm going to start in Luke chapter 6 and verse 13. Let's start in 12. And it came to pass in those days that he went out into a mountain to pray and continued all night in prayer to God. We talked about that one yesterday, but perhaps this is the reason that he prayed all night long. And when it was day, he called unto him his disciples, and of them he chose 12, whom also he named apostles. So it was a very important thing for him to choose out of all those people that were following him, his disciples, 12 that he would call apostles. Now, some people want to say that apostle, but there is a word apostle, and it's like a reference or something that you're going to give a reference to. It's not the same word, but pronounce it apostles, because that's the way the dictionary tells us to do it. So they had, whom also he named apostles. And the apostles were people who were sent out by Jesus. He sent them 2 by 2 sometime, his disciples. He sent them out to make the way before him, go to the cities that he was going to go to. So you will read about that later. But he sent them, these 12 special ones, his 12 disciples. Simon, whom he also named Peter. And you remember that Andrew brought Simon to Jesus, and Jesus called him Cephas, which meant a stone. And that's in John. Called him Cephas, and from then on he was not just called Simon, he was called Simon Peter, or just Peter. And Andrew, his brother. So Simon and Andrew were brothers. James and John, they were brothers. Philip and Bartholomew. And Bartholomew had 2 names. Either he was called Nathaniel or Bartholomew. So sometimes it would be Nathaniel in the Bible, and sometimes it was Bartholomew. So that's what everybody assumes, that Nathaniel and Bartholomew are the same person, because they're linked together with Philip. And Philip is the one that brought Bartholomew or Nathaniel to Jesus. Then Matthew, and Matthew, of course, is the same name as, his name was Levi also. He was the tax collector that Jesus said, "Come follow me." And he left all and followed him. And it says Matthew and Thomas. Of course, Thomas had a last name Didymus, which meant twin, but we don't know anything about a twin that he had. Perhaps his daddy was a twin. I don't know. But Matthew and Thomas. Then it says James, the son of Alphaeus. Now, James was the son of Alphaeus, and we read over on to 16. Let's go ahead. James, the son of Alphaeus, and Simon called Zelotes, and Judas, the brother of James, and Judas Iscariot, which was also the traitor. So let's go back to where it says James, the son of Alphaeus. Now, did you know that James was the son of Alphaeus? If Judas was his brother, he was the son of Alphaeus, and Matthew or Levi was the son of Alphaeus. Now, that doesn't mean they were all 3 brothers, because Alphaeus might have been a common name in several, many men were named Alphaeus at that time. But it's just noteworthy that Matthew, James, and Judas were the son of Alphaeus, sons of Alphaeus. So I believe James and Judas, it says they were brothers. So we've got several sets of brothers in the disciples, don't we? And then it says, and Simon called Zelotes. And Zelotes was a term that meant zealot. He was somebody that was, they also called him Simon the Canaanite. He was somebody that was wanting to keep hold of the law of Moses, and was a zealot over in Israel. They were a party called the Zealots. So he was one of them. Simon called Zelotes, or Simon the Canaanite. And then Judas, the brother of James, and his name was Judas, or Jude the Less. No, excuse me. He was Judas, the brother of James. James was called James the Less, and that meant he was either younger or smaller than the other James, which was the brother to John. Anyhow, he was called James the Less. And Judas, the brother of James, he was what we see sometimes in the other list of the apostles or the 12 disciples. He was called by other names. Let's look back and let's look in, I believe it was Mark chapter 4 or 3. Let's see, 3? Yeah, 3. And it says, James the son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus. So this other Jude was also called Thaddeus. And then we could look at, let's look in Matthew when it gives the list of the disciples. And it says in chapter 10 of Matthew, and it says, and Lebbaeus, whose surname was Thaddeus. He had 3 names. He had Lebbaeus, he had Thaddeus, and he had Judas names. So that disciple, it's hard to find him sometimes when we're looking at the list of disciples. Judas, the brother of James. But Judas, the brother of James, was also known as Lebbaeus or Thaddeus. So, but they were brothers, and we don't know that Matthew was also known as Levi. We don't know if he was even kin to them, but he also was a son of Alphaeus. So that's just interesting to think about it and to try to put together as who the disciples were. The main, of course, were Peter and James and John, always. But then we come to the last one, which was Judas Iscariot, which also was the traitor. Always known as the traitor. I would not, oh my. Jesus told him it'd be better if he hadn't even been born. It's a sad situation. Iscariot, I looked that up, and it meant that he was from a city called Kerioth, which was a city in southern Judah, where Judah and Simeon had their land together. In that southern part, that's where Judas was from, and that's why his name was Judas Iscariot. Okay, so that's all the names of the disciples, and we covered them just as good as well as I'm able to do. And verse 17 said, and he came down with them and stood in the plain, and the company of his disciples, and a great multitude of people out of all Judea and Jerusalem, and from the seacoast of Tyre and Sidon, which came to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. So Jesus was very popular, and he was making ways for as many people to hear him as could possibly hear him. He stood in the plain, and the company of his disciples, and a great multitude of people coming from all around. They came to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. Now, as we go through this, where he came to this plain, we're going to learn that if we studied in Matthew what was known as the Sermon on the Mount, and it's going to tell a lot of the same things in this portion of this sermon that he told in the Sermon on the Mount. It's just not as long. But here's what he taught there. And they that were vexed with unclean spirits, and they were healed. So he was sending the devil out of people. He was healing people of their diseases. And it says, and the whole multitude sought to touch him, for there went virtue out of him and healed them all. He didn't even have to pray for them. They just touched him, and the virtue went out of him, and they were healed. Wow. It's also, remember when Peter was just walking in the book of Acts, and they just tried to get under his shadow. So I know that healing virtue can be imparted to those of us who carry Jesus in our hearts. You know, The Spirit of Christ is in me. And I know that that can be imparted where I don't have to touch somebody and they can still be healed by my shadow, just touching my garment. I know that has to do something to somebody if that is working through them like that. And that's why Jesus wants us to love him so fully and so be so loyal to him. Because if that kind of power is imparted to you, then the enemy will try to make you think you're something. But no, it isn't us that's anything. It's the power of Jesus Christ inside of us. But that virtue went out of him and healed them all. No wonder all those sick people were coming, because they were all getting healed. This day and time, you go to the doctor's offices and we went to one the other day. I went with Lee, and it was crawling with people. If you want, I hate to say it like that, but there were people everywhere, and they weren't being healed. They were just being doctored to be healed. If that started happening here, you couldn't even get into Highland City. You couldn't get into it because people would be coming from all over the world. They did during that. I don't think it was a real revival, but when they thought was a real revival in Lakeland. Lakeland has been a place of revival. And if it happens here in Highland City, it's all roads are going to lead to Highland City, because people are hungry to be healed. They need to be healed. That's why when anybody asks me to pray for them, I try to on the online. If they give me a comment they need prayer, I try to pray for them, and I believe for them, because I'm looking for God to use the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man. It availeth much. Now we're getting to his sermon, verse 20. And he lifted up his eyes on his disciples and said, Blessed be ye poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Now you can say that word blessed or blessed. Which do you like? I've always, when any of these were read, I've always heard it blessed. But when you say it blessed, it even seems to be more powerful. Blessed be ye poor. You're blessed. Like a verb, not just an adjective that you are blessed, but a verb. You're blessed. Blessed be ye poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Poor? Who wants to be poor? Jesus said. But in Matthew he said, called ye poor in spirit. Blessed be ye poor in spirit. But were you raised poor? I was. In some ways I'm still a lot poorer than a lot of people around me. But that attitude of, I'm not rich, that's what the Lord's talking about. When you feel that you're not rich, you are rich, because yours is the kingdom of God. You have something maybe that the rich people don't even know exists. Blessed. We're going to say blessed this time. I've never read it that way before, but I'm going to read it this time. Blessed are ye that hunger now, for ye shall be filled. Are you hungry right now? I haven't eaten anything today, and I feel hungry. Now, I don't know. I've fasted before, and I know how it feels to really be hungry. So the Lord wanted you to know that if you're hungry, you're going to be filled. And in Matthew, he said, hunger and thirst after righteousness. So there's times that it isn't physical hunger we feel, it's spiritual hunger. And God wanted you to know that that's a blessed condition to get to where you're hungry. because for ye shall be filled. Blessed are ye that weep now, for ye shall laugh. Have you spent any time crying lately? Crying over what? Crying over somebody that's lost? Crying over somebody that's sick? Crying over somebody that their life and their family just seems to be getting worse and worse? Have you spent some time weeping? He said, you're blessed if you do that, for ye shall laugh. You're going to have a great thing to laugh over. And that's not just laughing over something that's funny. It's laughing over something that has been done to help a need. Blessed are ye that weep now, for ye shall laugh. Verse 22 says, blessed are ye when men shall hate you, and they shall separate you from their company, and shall reproach you, and cast out your name as evil for the Son of Man's sake. You know, I just read that one, but I'm not going to start talking about it or sharing it today. I'm going to wait till tomorrow because we're running out of time. But you might think about it. Some of you don't want anybody to hate you. You don't want anybody to separate you from their company or reproach you. You definitely don't want them to cast out your name as evil, even for Jesus' sake. Think about it. He said, if that's the case, you're blessed. All right, I'll get back with that tomorrow. God bless you.